This is another damn podcast about digital asset management. I'm Henrik Gyor, and today I'm talking with Mike Hollitscher. Mike, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good. How are you involved with digital asset management?
Basically, I am the manager of digital asset management for a digital marketing agency called Digitas. When I first started here, we were an independent company, national in scope. In the past, I guess 2, 3 years, we were purchased by Publicis Group, so we've become basically the global part of the global digital arm of I think the third largest media company in the world, media and advertising company in the world now.
Wow.
My job basically revolves around trying to ingest and organize all the digital assets that we are creating and receiving from our clients.
Great.
In addition to that, I'm also involved in a bunch of other sort of technology issues. Just trying to see where we're going for the future.
Do you find yourself often closely linked with both the creatives and the technical side of your business?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the end, it's I kind of end up being the liaison between those two. Be it not only just creative, also like our marketing people, our delivery people, our creative, and really, when you get right down to it, DAM is much more of a marketing tool than I think a creative tool. So, I end up having to speak, both languages. The sort of core groups language, and also, to a certain degree, IT. I'm not an IT person. I'm still confused as an IT person all the time. But basically, I interface between those two groups quite a bit, and that's kind of where it comes in. That I'm trying more to see where we're going and where the pain points are. Not all in our digital asset management strategy and just our content strategies at this point.
Great. And you recently started a meetup group called NYC Digital Asset Managers. This has been quite successful in its first year. Why did you first start this group?
I can't really claim ownership of say starting the group. That was really on Chad. Chad and I actually met at a Henry Stewart conference. I believe it was 2 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting how it springs out of I think a lot of people's experiences going to Henry Stewart and various damn conferences over the last 6 or 7 years, where I was actually presenting on some of the strategies we've used to tag photo libraries or other sort of assets with XMP metadata, and how we were looking to basically our nuts and bolts process and then pushing it out, and where we were going for the future. Afterwards, Chad came up to me, and he was really excited because he was basically doing the exact same stuff that I was. Mm-hmm. And it just so turned out that we share a digital asset management platform. We use the same vendor. We also share an integrator. And, we had a great conversation. And, one of the things that's always been interesting about, going to DAM conferences since the first one I went to was probably in 2003 or 2004, was just that, back then you were always working in this sort of vacuum, and you're flying blind a lot of times. Maybe you had an integrator, maybe you didn't. You talked to your vendor, but there really wasn't a good amount of standards, and there weren't really a lot of people to talk to. Mm-hmm. So at that point, Henry Stewart was the one time a year you could actually go somewhere and talk to people and not feel like you were absolutely totally alone.
Sure.
And a few weeks, we had shot emails back and forth, and Chad was interested in setting up a meetup group. He said he started one, and he asked if I would if I would help out, and I was able to provide a few different ideas and a few different sort of resources to really start to get it going. And after a while, I was basically billed as a co-organizer. We've basically just been bouncing ideas back and forth to each other and coming up with good people to bring in to present. And I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about like how it was, 6 or 7 years ago, that it's like, well, I think what we're really providing is like an opportunity for people to come in and just actually have a chance to talk to other people in their realm, in their field, because in general, when you're doing digital asset management, you're the only guy there, and maybe you have some contacts with other people in your office, but there isn't, there really aren't any other people who are sharing your experience. And there's just so much to pull in, and there's so many different directions you can go with it. It's a very holistic sort of career, where you are looking at the entire process of how your company is doing their work. And most people don't. Your average worker in a job is just like, they're focused on their small part of the puzzle. So I would say, like, without sounding maudlin, I mean, it can get a little lonely at certain points where it's like, who can I call upon? Where can I learn how to, like, deal with video assets better, how to set up a taxonomy, who's doing stuff that's really exciting and cool. And that's really what we're trying to provide, sort of a knowledge base, but also because I'm finishing up a master's at Pratt in the Library and Information Sciences. One of the things I've been trying to do is a lot of outreach to other LIS programs in our area. So we've been getting a pretty fair amount of students coming in who, in a field that is becoming vastly more digital, they can really start getting their feet wet and get an idea of like where everything's going, whether this is a good career choice. And a lot of times, those are who the best ideas come from. We're very egalitarian. We're looking, if you're a member, you can present.
Good idea. Mm-hmm.
Everybody, because we have a lot of experts, but we also have a lot of people, even if they're just starting out. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've come up with fantastic ideas, or they have great internships, and that's what we're really, we're looking for knowledge from everybody in that way.
What advice would you share with other DAM professionals and even people aspiring to become a DAM professional?
That's a good question, because it's interesting how the whole sort of the field, the space has changed. Because I mean, again, if you're going back to like the early part of last decade, you could go around and ask 15 different people who were managing a dam how they ended up in that job, and it was really like, a company bought a system and they looked around the room and looked at one guy or one girl and said, that person's running it. And, invariably they came from some sort of print field, usually production or something like that. And, there are a lot of people like myself who are just sort of thrown into the breach, and they just had to learn all the different aspects of how to make this happen and how to do it on the fly. I'm kind of cheering for the home team here, but I think having a library science degree is, a fantastic way to do it. It's a great way to get a grounding in it, but, I think it's kind of a specific type of person in a lot of ways too. I mean, in the end, what we're talking about is classification, and classification is again, another really holistic sort of concept. And it's a very like basic concept, because it's like when it's so inherent in our human experience, because the one thing all humans do when they look at something, after they look at something, they classify it. Mm-hmm. They put it in a particular box or a particular category. So, it's really like taking an organization's assets and trying to not only to classify it, but also to figure out how they move and what are like the best states for them to move from. So, it's a bunch of different sort of complementary, somewhat, what's the term I'm looking for? Sometimes competing skill sets, like being able to be very granular, but very like have that holistic sort of overarching big picture view at the same time. And having to have a lot of focus, but also having to be incredibly gregarious and willing to like be very social and just always trying to like find a way to develop stuff in a new, different way. You have to be very patient and very impatient at the same time. I would say, it, it's an interesting field to get into, if you want to be like sort of the hub of everything, if you have a lot of ideas about content and where the web is going and where, the digital content is going as well. I was reading a really interesting Wired article on the train coming in about how we're moving into more of a sort of like application model again in terms of the internet, with apps, with mobile, everything is sort of becoming like little pieces rather than the free wide open web anymore. And one of the things that sort of got me thinking, this kind of goes back to the whole idea of Jonathan Zittrain, throughout that, we're really going back into sort of a stage in computing that's based around appliances again. And that's where DAM fits in beautifully as like this, as really the sort of content delivery device for all these different applications. I mean, at the same time, what it really comes down to, you just have to be a very good communicator, I think, and somebody who's really willing to like just roll up their sleeves and try and iron out a problem that you'll probably never completely iron out because everything moves too quickly. You just really have to be willing to build as many bridges as possible and love technology, but also like kind of hate it a little bit too, in order to find where technology stops and where culture starts. And how to fix those culture issues as well. I think you're building bridges with, not only like through technology, but also through like just getting people to talk to each other. That's, I think in the end, you're sort of like more of a personality type than you are somebody, who has a specific set of skills, at the beginning of it.
That's fair. Well, thank you, Mike.
Oh, no problem.
For more on digital asset management, log on to anotherdamblog.com. Thanks again.